Germany vs Ivory Coast is taking place at the Football World Cup on Saturday the 20th at Toronto Stadium, a big Group E encounter, and it could decide where these two place and will decide where these two place within the group. The rest of the group is for Group E, Ecuador and Curacao. So these two sides, both teams that have gone with wins after the first round of their World Cup group stage. Germany, so their form recently, they have won 5 wins in a row, with their last match 7-1 to Curacao, obviously in round 1 of the World Cup, while Ivory Coast have had 4 wins in a row, with added to this their 1-0 win over Ecuador in the group stage of round 1. Now these two sides, this form, these two sides bring into this, and the two sides they bring together is quite exciting. I really like how they stack up, and I think they've both been two sides quietly underrated, and definitely teams to watch out for later stages of the tournament, because they are highly likely to get through. They stack up pretty evenly though. So Germany, their strengths, they are a side that like passing the ball. Their midfield likes to dominate games, and they rotate so well within the midfield, as we saw in Mecca and Pavlovic using. One of them would move up and one of them stay back and be the engine, and that meant that they had that extra attacker, but it also meant solidity at the back. While up front, Florian Wirtz, Musiala and Sané are nearly given full allowance to move wherever they like. That's obviously within the reason, but those rotations are so difficult to defend, and Ivory Coast will need to defend them well to keep them out, because 7 goals against Curacao show the dominance they can create with that midfield. Ivory Coast are strong with their transitions, their quick transitions, especially using their players like Diomande on the wings and on the right side. Diomande, he is such a useful player on that right, and he can cut in wherever he likes, and obviously the big focal point of the attack. Doué, he is Desiree Doué's brother. He's at right back, and he is great at linking the play together with Diomande as well. What could affect Ivory Coast though is that they often lose the ball deep and can become quite vulnerable from losing the ball often, and that happened against Ecuador, but their defence held out and was very strong to reward them with a clean sheet against Ecuador, quite a strong side. So this could be interesting, how they match up, because if Ivory Coast do lose the ball too often, that means Germany will be able to dominate the game, and Ivory Coast may not get many opportunities on the ball. One weakness though for Germany is that often behind Brown at left back, they can get caught on the counter, but that's only every so often, and that's only because Brown often moves very high, and it means those overlapping runs, there is so much room behind that. That's why Pavlovic is so important, getting back, and Mecca making sure they are back and defending. Otherwise, if they're all out attack, there could be opportunities on that right side for Diomande. Now, that is a matchup I really am excited to see how he works. Diomande, one of the massive players in Ivory Coast. And let's not forget Amad Diallo, another big player, who came off the bench and scored the winner in quite a phenomenal bit of play he produced. And it was that impact off the bench that they needed at that moment in time. And he's so useful coming wherever you want him, really. Most of the time he's from the right. But Amad Diallo, will he start? That is the question, because it was quite a surprise when he was put on the bench in their last match against Ecuador. But I think he could be really useful. And that is why Ivory Coast could be possible threats here. Now for Germany, Kimmich is a massive player within the rolling of this working of this team because of his leadership and his movements he creates. He at right back he's slightly limited to that area, which means he's slightly less creative, but I saw in that game against Curacao, he was still heavily involved with making moves up and creating lots of chances. And that's big for Germany because he is such a focal point in their defence and attack. Now, another player for Germany that really stood out for me and stood out for most people is Dennis Undav, coming off the bench and having 3 goal involvements. Now that was quite the impact for Germany, and the questions come now: where does he fit in within this team? Is he still a bench player after that performance, or is he going to fit in somewhere in that midfield? That's a really big question for Germany, because he is such a useful asset, and if you can get him on the field, he will be a big goal scorer and chance creator. And we really saw the best of him against Curacao. Now, who knows what he'll be like in the bigger games, but against a side possibly like Ivory Coast, breaking down their defence is going to be key, just like they did against Curacao. So he could be a player that needs to start for Germany. Alright, when I look at these two sides, how they match up, I think it's really about how Germany can control that left side of theirs. Because if they can work it so that Brown does not leave too many gaping holes for Diomande to run into, and can get back and defend, I think they could be really on and shut Ivory Coast down, because Diomande is the big player to shut down in Ivory Coast. The other questions could come when they are attacking. Does Doué rise too high and they can get behind him? So what I'm saying here is this game is going to be played down Germany's left channel and down Ivory Coast's right channel. It's all going to be stacked around there. So watch that area, as that is where the big wins and losses in the game will occur. Now, talking about where this game's going to be won, I think it will be won from the depth of the bench and the best energy and impact that those bench players make. As deep in the game, we have seen so many times that goals will occur at a deadlock, will occur really late in the game. And we've seen so many late goals this World Cup, and I bet you we will see more. So what about those players, Dennis Undav and Amad Diallo? If they are not starting and coming off the bench, they need to make the same impact they did last game. They need to, otherwise they could be at threat of not being able to finish out games. Now, my prediction for this match is that Germany will win 2-1 to Ivory Coast. And I think that is because there is still too much quality, but I think this will be a much more difficult test than Curacao. Alright, I'm coming up again. Listen out for more.